I'm Sarah. I live alone in a quiet two-story house just outside of Portland. It's the kind of place people forget exists if they're not looking for it. And that's exactly what I wanted. Peace, distance, quiet. I haven't seen my daughter Olivia in 10 years. Not since the day she stood in my kitchen, told me I was holding her back, and left without saying goodbye. She didn't call, didn't write, just disappeared, like I was something she had outgrown. Then, last Tuesday morning, she showed up on my front porch like it hadn't been a decade. Like we were picking up from a long weekend instead of a broken bond. She had her husband with her, Daniel, a man I'd only met twice, once at their wedding and once at a party where I was introduced as a family friend to save her from embarrassment. They were both holding suitcases, matching ones, expensive ones. Olivia was dressed like she'd come from a magazine shoot instead of a long drive. Her hair was pulled back into a perfect ponytail, and her nails were freshly done. Daniel looked uncomfortable in a casual sort of way, the kind that doesn't come naturally to men who live off appearances. I stood behind the screen door and waited. Olivia didn't waste time. She smiled like nothing had happened and said they were moving in. Just like that. No apology, no explanation, not even a greeting. She looked past me, into the hallway, and said it made sense. I had all this space. I was alone, and now that I'd won the lottery, we could be a family again. Daniel nodded along, though he didn't say much. He let her do the talking. I suppose he always did. Olivia called it reconnecting. Said they were worried about me. Said they didn't want me to be taken advantage of by strangers. Said they wanted to help. She used the word help like it was a shield, like I wouldn't notice the entitlement underneath it. She didn't ask if she could stay. She told me, because in her mind she was owed something, because I was her mother, because I had money now, and in her world, that changed everything. But she didn't know me anymore. Not really. She didn't know the woman I had become in the silence she left behind. The woman who had learned how to be alone without being lonely. The woman who had learned that peace is more precious than forced family. I looked at them both. At the suitcases on my porch. At the expectation in her voice. At a quiet calculation in his eyes. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. I opened the door. Slowly. Calmly. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. Instead, I smiled. The kind of smile that isn't about warmth but control. The kind of smile that says you're not who I was, and I'm not who you think. And I did what I should have done a long time ago. I said, come in. Not because I was happy to see them, not because I wanted to forgive, but because I was ready. Ready to listen. Ready to confront. Ready to end this story the way it should have ended all those years ago. On my terms, not theirs. They followed me into the living room like guests expecting champagne. Olivia dropped her bags just inside the door without asking, as if the house already belonged to her. Daniel scanned the space with quiet interest, probably calculating resale value or imagining what their furniture would look like in here. I motioned to the couch and watched as they took their seats. Settling in like this was some kind of reunion. Olivia folded one leg over the other and adjusted her blouse. Her smile was wide but stiff, the kind you wear when you've rehearsed it too many times. She started with small talk, said it had been too long, said she regretted how things ended. Daniel nodded at all the right moments, but his eyes gave away nothing. I stayed quiet and let them speak. I wasn't there to fill in their gaps or make them feel comfortable. Then Olivia shifted gears. She leaned in and lowered her voice, like we were sharing a secret. She said she was concerned, not about the past, but about the future. About me. She'd read about people who win the lottery and end up worse off. Said there were scammers out there, predators. That I was at risk. She used the word vulnerable and tried to say it gently, like it wouldn't sting. She said she and Daniel just wanted to be nearby in case I needed support, just until things settled. Just to make sure everything stayed safe. Safe for who? I wondered. I didn't respond. I just listened, watching the show unfold like I had front row seats to a play written by amateurs. The lines were weak, the acting was forced. Olivia touched my hand like it was still hers to hold, and told me this was about family, about love, about reconnecting. She called it a fresh start, as if the past 10 years could be painted over with one coat of intention. I looked at her face, at the curve of her mouth, at the way she tilted her head like she used to when she lied as a child. It hadn't changed. None of it had. Daniel finally spoke, saying they'd cleared their schedules just for me, that they weren't here to ask for anything, just to help. Help with decisions, help with finances, help manage the pressure. Still, I said nothing. I let the silence hold its shape. Because silence is a mirror, and eventually people reveal themselves in it. They were building a stage. What they didn't know was that I'd already seen the script. And I was no longer the woman who'd sit quietly in the wings. I let them finish their little show before I said a single word. Then I stood, walked to the side table, and pulled out a folder I'd tucked away days earlier. Their eyes followed my hands like they already knew whatever was inside that folder wasn't going to go in their favor. I sat back down and placed it on my lap. Then I looked directly at Olivia. You said you're here to help, that you're worried I might be taken advantage of. Funny, because that's exactly why I hired someone to look into your lives the moment I saw your names pop up again. Olivia's face went pale. Daniel sat up straighter. I opened the folder slowly. Not for drama, but because I wanted the silence to stretch just a little longer. I told them I knew about the second mortgage on their home. The 3 credit cards were maxed out in Olivia's name. The business line of credit that Daniel opened and defaulted on. Then I told them about the lawsuit. The one pending from Daniel's former client. The one who accused him of misrepresentation and breach of contract. I read the first line of the complaint out loud. Daniel's mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. I kept going. I mentioned the consulting business registered under a shell corporation, the fake reviews, the inflated invoices, the paper trail that led to nowhere. I told them about the tax liens, about the closed accounts, about the bounced checks. Their silence didn't shock me. It confirmed everything I already knew. Olivia finally broke the stillness. She said things had been hard, that they made mistakes, that they were trying to get back on track. I told her that trying would have looked different. Trying wouldn't have started with a suitcase and a story. It would have started with honesty. Daniel asked how I found all this. I said, when you have money, you learn quickly how to protect it. You hire good people. You ask the right questions. You dig until the dirt gives way. They didn't see that coming. The shift was clear now. 10 minutes ago, they were in control. Now they were scrambling. I could see it in their eyes. The panic, the weight of being caught. They hadn't come here for me. They'd come for my money. But now they understood something they hadn't counted on. I wasn't the woman they left behind. Not anymore. And I wasn't someone they could lie to and walk away clean. They sat on the couch, stunned. Neither of them spoke. I gave them a moment to breathe, but not too long. You came here asking for help. You didn't say it out loud, but every move, every carefully chosen word told me what you really wanted. So let me be clear about what kind of help I'm actually willing to offer. I'm not paying off your debt. I'm not writing a check to fix your mistakes. I'm not going to rescue you from consequences you worked hard to earn. But I am willing to help on my terms. First, you apologize. Not just to me, but to every person you've lied to, borrowed from, and used. No excuses. No justifications. A real apology. Second, you go to therapy. Real therapy. Not some polished once-a-month session to check a box. You go separately. You dig into why you became people who manipulate, who deceive, who lie. You take that seriously, or you take nothing from me. Third, you pay back the people you owe. All of them. Not just what you can afford, but what you took. If that means years of payments, so be it. If that means calling people you hoped never to see again, do it. And fourth, you get real jobs. No more consulting. No more vague business ventures with inflated titles. No more pretending to be something you're not. You go to work. You get a paycheck. You learn what it means to earn what you spend. They stared at me like I'd handed them a shovel and told them to dig their way out of a cave. Maybe I had. But this time, they were going to have to do it without stepping on someone else's back. Then I looked directly at Olivia and said what I'd been carrying in my chest for too long. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. Let that sink in. I can forgive you. I already have, in some ways. But trusting you again? That's a different mountain entirely. You don't get trust because you're family. You don't get it because you're sorry. You get it because you've changed. And change takes time. Years, not days. They both looked at me like they weren't sure if this was a gift or a sentence. I suppose it was a little of both. But it was also the truth. And the truth is, this was their one chance. If they took it, they'd have a path. A hard one, but a real one. If they didn't, the door would close behind them. And this time, I wouldn't be waiting on the other side. I stood up and walked to the desk in the corner of the room. I opened the drawer slowly and pulled out a sealed envelope. Thick, cream-colored, heavy. I set it gently on the coffee table between us. There's one last thing we need to talk about before you make any decisions. I've been in contact with someone from your past, someone you left behind when it was convenient. His name is Eric. Daniel froze. Olivia's breath caught. Eric Bennett, your old business partner. He reached out to me after the lottery news broke. Said he had a file. Said he'd been waiting for the right time. Turns out, this was it. He knew what you did. The money you moved. The contracts you forged. The promises you broke. I opened the envelope and pulled out the letter from Eric's attorney. It wasn't a threat. It was a deadline. You have 24 hours to respond. Pay restitution. Or face criminal charges. Fraud. Embezzlement. Wire transfer violations. They didn't say anything. They didn't have to. It was written all over their faces. I wasn't telling them something new. I was confirming something they'd spent months hoping would disappear. Eric gave me a choice. Stay silent, or help him bring this forward. I told him it depended on what you chose to do. Not because I owe you protection, but because I needed to see if you had even a trace of honesty left in you. This isn't revenge. It's clarity. You made choices, and choices come with consequences. What happens next isn't up to me anymore. It's up to you. You can take the path I offered you: therapy, work, restitution, or you can keep running until the law catches up. Either way, the clock is ticking. And for once, you don't get to control the story. You only get to decide how it ends. The call came just after 7 the next morning. I had barely taken the first sip of coffee when the phone lit up with her name. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was quiet. Flat. But not cold. She said they would do it. All of it. The therapy. The restitution. The work. She didn't ask for anything more. Just said they would start where I told them to. I didn't rush to respond. I let her sit in that moment of her own choosing. Then I asked the question I'd been holding on to since the night before. If I hadn't won the lottery, would you have come back? Silence stretched between us like a thread pulled too tight. I almost said never mind. But then she answered, no, I don't think I would have. I was angry at you. I was ashamed of myself. And I think I thought you'd stopped loving me too. Her voice cracked on that last word. Not enough to break her. Just enough to make it real. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I told her, thank you. Not for the confession, but for not lying this time. Then I said I forgave her. Not because she earned it. Not because she deserved it. But because I was tired of carrying the weight of what she had done. Forgiveness isn't a prize. It's a release. For her, maybe. But mostly for me. I told her I didn't hate her. I wasn't angry anymore. But trust would take time. And that door would only open again if she built the path back to it one honest step at a time. She said she understood. I believed her. Not fully, but enough to let the call end without bitterness. After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a while. The window above the sink was fogged with morning mist, and the garden outside was still damp with dew. The roses were starting to bloom again, the early light catching the edge of each petal like soft gold. I poured a fresh cup of coffee and walked to the back porch. The air was cool and everything felt still. Not empty, just quiet. Like the space you finally make after cleaning out something that sat untouched for years. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sad. I just felt still. And in that stillness, something shifted. I realized I was done waiting for apologies that never came in the right form. Done hoping that love would always look the way I needed it to. I was done giving my peace away in the name of keeping the past close. I'm finally free. And real wealth? It's knowing your worth.